It's been 8 weeks of multiple hustings and events. The United Kingdom will soon have a new Prime Minister today. The surveys indicate Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is tipped to be the next Prime Minister. However, according to recent opinion polls, Liz Truss's popularity has seen a sharp decline. Support for Foreign Secretary seems to be waning before her expected appointment today. A poll by a global public opinion and data company YouGov shows that only 12% of Britons expect Truss to be a good or a great leader, while 52% expect her to be a poor or terrible leader. Britons seem to be split on whether Truss will be better than Boris Johnson. But seeing the polls here, the majority of the people tend to think that she would be worse than every other premier going back to Margaret Thatcher. As per the data provided by the research agency Opinion, the percentage of Britons who expect to see Truss as the next UK Prime Minister has also declined from 49% to 31% over the last month. The polls reinforce how damaging the leadership debate has been for Truss. Much of Truss's agenda in the hustings has been about slashing taxes and prioritising economic growth. She'd earlier criticised the notion of direct government handouts, but recently Truss promised to deliver immediate support to Britons facing unaffordable fuel bills.
I will act immediately on bills and on energy supply, because I think those two things go hand in hand. We need to deal with the immediate problem. We need to help people. We need to help businesses. But we also need to sort out the supply issues that have made us end up being where we are now. It's the job of the Bank of England to bring inflation down. And I'm a great believer in the independence of the Bank of England.
Now, Sunak, on the other hand, has called Truss's plans reckless. He's warned that they risk heightening inflation even further. The former Chancellor has argued that his experience of guiding the UK's finances through the pandemic make him better suited to lead the country through its current economic crisis.
Will unlock the power sharing and bring people back together. And yes, lots of people will say, well, you can't be tough on people, and there's always a good excuse. Steer us through the storms ahead. And my plan is the right plan, to tackle inflation, to compassionately support those who most need our help, and to safeguard our children's economic inheritance, because as Margaret Thatcher and Nigel Lawson knew, maxing out the country's credit card is not right, it's not responsible, and it is certainly not conservative.
Truss or Sunak, whoever wins the keys to Downing Street will have one of the shortest political periods here, especially with the burden to take out United Kingdom from the current economic crisis. Now for more on this, we're joined by our correspondent Alex Izat from London. Thank you so much for joining us, Alex. What can you tell us of the mood on ground? Liz Truss tipped to be the next UK Prime Minister.
It seems to be that many people are disillusioned by the government in general. They're disappointed about real issues.
Well, also we see that Liz Truss's popularity has seen a significant dip. What would you say has led to this?
Well, much of Truss's rhetoric on the hustings has been focused on cutting taxes and criticising the
Well, we will try and get Alex back online with us. For more on this, we're also being joined by Omar Azhar from London, a political analyst. Thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast. UK to get a new Prime Minister in a short while from now. Looking at the plans laid out by both the Prime Ministerial hopefuls, who would you say is better placed to take over and why?
Well, that indeed is a billion-dollar question right there. Who is better placed? I think of the two, it's very hard to pick one. But at this point in time, I think Liz Truss is not only leading amongst party members and is not only being tipped to win the race for the Conservative leadership, but has also managed to show and expound a little more on cost of living crises, on her plans vis-a-vis Russia and Ukraine. She's taken the tax cut issue head on and propagated for major tax cuts, including including on national insurance contributions, which she hopes to reverse the 1.25% rise that happened under Rishi Sunak's finance ministry. So what we see at the moment is both these candidates battling it out, but I think Liz Truss at the moment is better placed to take over the Conservative Party leadership. Also given the fact that she has a significant number of members of the Conservative Party who support her and her policies.
Absolutely, but as I mentioned, we also see a dip in popularity for Liz Truss, and some of the main challenges, as you very well mentioned there, energy crisis, record high inflation, the imminent recession. Now, who would you say, as per your analysis, has a better plan and is better equipped?
I think specifically, if we divide it on an issue basis, on one hand, we've got the cost of living crisis. Rishi Sunak propagates spending billions of pounds in terms of direct expenditure and providing direct relief to the vulnerable people and lower income groups who are being worst hit by the energy crisis. Whereas Liz Truss has propagated for tax cuts, reversing the 1.25% increase in national insurance contributions. She's talked about, instead of spending directly, she's talked about borrowing money and she's talked about borrowing more funds from the state and the private banks, and then spend them on people. So at the end of the day, both have these contrasting positions on how they hope to take the economy forward and reduce the cost of living crisis, which, by the way, has gone to the point where domestic household energy bills are now crossing an average of £4,000 a year. So at the end of the day, on one hand, we've got Rishi Sunak, who's got the experience, who's handled the pandemic-ridden economy. And on the other, we have Liz Truss, who is pro-borrowing, pro-tax cuts. It's going right down to the wire in terms of who can handle the economy better. But at this point in time, I think the big problem with one of Rishi's plans happens to be is that his plan to spend billions of pounds on people in terms of direct relief, while that is very important and while that would help vulnerable groups, at this point, we haven't seen a concerted plan come out from Rishi or something solid which explains how that would be possible. Whereas Liz has just asked for tax cuts, which will have a direct impact as well. So it's right there. And then we've got the issue of Ukraine and China, which we can talk about if you want.
Right, absolutely. In fact, I was just going to come to that. When it comes to challenges on the global stage, we just spoke of the domestic challenges back at home. What would you say is the path forward on the global stage when it comes to the current war in Ukraine, also China?
I think the question of what happens and what the United Kingdom's position vis-a-vis China and Ukraine is going to be how one of the two leaders, and whichever one becomes prime minister, handles their internal party rift better. Because amongst the conservative ranks, we see a very hawkish position on China. We see the personnel and Conservative Party members who believe China should not be integrated into the information management system of the United Kingdom, who believe in a very tough trade policies against China as well, although China remains one of Britain's biggest trading partners. So you have this caucus within the Conservative Party that is hawkish in China. and it depends on how one of Rishi and Liz manages to sway them, or manages to either co-opt them, or manages to, bring them into the purview and then formulate policy on the basis of that. So it's going to be very hard to see what they do with China. On the issue of Ukraine, I think they have to strike the right balance in providing military assistance, financial assistance to Ukraine, and ensuring that energy prices don't go up any further. Because a direct impact of providing assistance to Ukraine is the soaring and rising energy costs. And we've seen that happen with Russia suspending gas supply via Nord Stream just recently again, right? So at the end of the day, it's a very, very tough choice what to do with Ukraine. They have to strike the right balance. And I personally think that there will be a time in the coming months when it will be very hard for Liz or Rishi to support the war in Ukraine, because public perception will want them to have a policy in place which reduces energy costs, which ensures that there are no more costs borne by the people because of Russian sanctions, versus this, in a prospect where they're supporting Ukraine. So they have to strike the right balance. It's going to be very
Absolutely, absolutely right. It's going to be a tough balancing act for whoever takes over next. Thank you so much, Mr. Omar Azhar, for joining us on this broadcast with your analysis.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.